Love the weather.
Yeah, nice.
You're all ready to go, Rob. Hi. I think Maggie told me she was, thought she was gonna
I saw her walk in.
Oh, she did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's a good thing y'all are here because I don't see the McDonald's.
I didn't know if they'd be here today or not. I don't know what the latest is.
They told my husband they wouldn't be in church on Sunday, but I didn't hear about today.
They were here Sunday.
Yeah, they said they wouldn't be here next Sunday.
Oh, next Sunday, yeah, I don't know what the latest is, but I might know.
Well, you're looking for the music? Is that what you're doing?
Well, I guess I need that too. Thank you.
Okay, there's one of those. I got two there. Thank you.
The first Noel, awake and greet the new morn. I don't think I know that one.
Mm-hmm.
We're just doing no more.
You will after
Well, I don't have
today.
a voice, so if it's something I don't know, I have a hard time
So
singing
you're gonna have
out.
to lower it an octave. You've got to voice.
I'm in between. I can't sing roll if it gets too low. Are we on the ninth step?
sure that
My mother
we are
saw
not
me, she was, like,
miserable. We
very
just,
young
I'm a planner.
also.
We're gonna make sure we have feet on the ground.
Well, look at this way, we had 47 years right there. And we had 47 years, we did what we wanted to do when we were young. And we went, we did everything.
All right. 10 o'clock.
So retirement really was almost boring.
This is good morning. Good morning. This is good to see you. This is an Advent hymn. There's not a lot of Advent hymns. We kind of cheat here at Faith Church, and we just go straight into Christmas songs. You're kind of supposed to wait until Christmas, but I mean, come on.
We had a minister once who stuck by it faithfully, and he got a lot of guff.
Yeah.
We didn't even sing Christmas songs. during
Yeah,
Christmas.
we don't want to wait, even though Advent's about waiting.
Patience is not an American virtue.
No, patience is not. So this, we'll sing a few verses of this that you'll catch on. It's a simple little modern day Advent song. Awake, awake, and greet the new morn, for angels herald its dawning. Sing out for joy, for soon he is born. Behold the child of our longing. Come as a baby weak and poor, to bring our hearts together. He opened wide the heavenly door, and lives now inside us forever. It's on the backside. To us in all, in sorrow and fear, Emmanuel comes a singing. His humble song is quiet and near, yet fills the earth with its ringing. Music to heal the broken soul, and hymns of loving kindness. The thunder of the heavens roll, to litter all hatred and blindness. In darkest night his coming shall be, when all the world is despairing. As morning light, so quiet and free, so warm and gentle and caring. Then shall the mute break forth in song, the lame shall leap in wonder, the weak be raised above the strong, and weapons be broken asunder. Rejoice, rejoice, take heart in the night, though dark is winter and cheerless. The rising sun will crown you with light. Be strong and loving and fearless. Love be our song, and love our prayer, and love our endless story. May God fill every day we share, and bring us at last into glory. All right, let's pray. God, we're grateful for this Advent season. We look forward to your coming. We celebrate how you have come to your people in the past, how you come to us today, and how you will come to us in the future. We look forward to studying your word today and examining how we can draw closer to you and one another. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Put that aside until next year.
You're gonna have us do it every Wednesday?
No.
Thank you.
It's a nice song. I like to sing it, but I don't know if it's a keeper
It
for
was nice, I just.
a long time.
Stretched us.
All right. So, welcome you who are joining here. It looks like we've got a couple folks online. We've got Joy, joining from home, resting a boo-boo knee. Hope you're feeling better as the day goes on, Joy. And then Bob and Carol are watching and waiting. They have a showing of their house today. So
Oh, I have to go for another sapphire.
good luck to you, and we'll enjoy being with you in the meantime while you wait. So we're going to pick up kind of where we left off before. We are in step 9. And so let me go back to the beginning of our chapter here. All right, so this means making direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So we talked about making amends. We got ready to make amends. We made a list of people that we would make amends with. These are people that have been affected by our shortcomings, our faults, the ones that we listed previously. These parts about us that kind of manifested as we have, they manifested as we kind of saw in front of us our uncontrollable addictions kind of taking its toll on us and the people around us. So there is this connection. I guess as time goes on, we will draw connections between our faults and our addictions. I think we may have more than one addiction, but our faults, our list of faults is going to be probably pretty big if we look closely. But it's this multitude of faults. What our multitude of faults does is it manifests through just a kind of a select few addictions. We kind of get our favorite addictions. This is our way of coping. It's a kind of our way of. There's this word dysfunction in the world of relationships. Dysfunction means it's functioning, it's working, but it's not good for everybody involved. It's
perfect except for one thing.
Yeah. Totally perfect except for one thing. Right. So it's not that they're. We figure out ways to go through life. We keep going through life, but it's not the healthiest of ways. It's not the most functional of ways, and it kind of takes its toll on us and on other people. So these are the people that we're kind of meditating on and thinking about. These are the ones that have been affected by our behaviors, and making amends to them. It hasn't really. Step 9 doesn't tell us exactly how to do that. We would imagine asking for forgiveness is a part of that, a part of making amends, acknowledging our faults. But again, we're doing this carefully because our goal is not to make things worse, but our goal is to make things better. And sometimes making amends can make things better. Sometimes trying to make amends can make things worse. So that's kind of what it doesn't, we may take these, we may take these steps and then tie them into Christian teachings. You don't hear Jesus say, ask for forgiveness if you feel like it. Or ask for forgiveness if the other person is going to be open to your apology. Or there's nothing conditional here. when Jesus talks about forgiveness, he goes to this extent of saying, how many times do we ask forgiveness? Well, he says 70 times 7 or 70 times 7, 7 times 70. So you don't just say I'm sorry once, you say I'm sorry 490 times. So this, of course, Jesus uses hyperbole and exaggeration to make a point, which is you don't hold back forgiveness, and you don't ask forgiveness sparingly. It's something that should just kind of flow.
I think life is too complicated to say much when you ask for forgiveness. It's kind of better if you do it. Just do it, but don't go into why and how and make it so that's a big drawn out. You need to see a therapist together if you're going to make a big deal out of it.
It almost seems like forgiveness, if it's done right away, if it's done as soon as we acknowledge what we've done, it's a little easier. If time goes on, it seems those things tend to sour. Bitterness tends to set in if we hold back on our apologies. But yes, you're right. Sometimes a simple apology that could just take a few seconds and let it settle and do its thing. Sometimes that, probably most of the time that's preferable. If we make it complicated, then it can turn into like a court case. Yeah. It can turn into bringing in witnesses and evidence and rehashing and then bringing in old stuff and then point being, we have this teaching on forgiveness, and Jesus seems to be saying, do it quickly, do it lightly, do it often. And it's almost like the oil in the engine. It kind of keeps things running smoothly, keeps things from overheating. It's kind of it keeps things smooth and lubricated, and it helps. It helps with the friction. That's what oil does. So when we have forgiveness in there it's a part of the makeup of our relationships. It's almost like if you look at the way that God institutes his covenant with Israel, he includes within the covenant sacrifices for forgiveness. It's included in the relationship. It's not something, God doesn't come on the scene and say, I'm establishing a relationship with you, and then let's do it, here we go. And then later on, years later, God is like, okay, this is not working out. We need to add in sacrifices for forgiveness because you guys seems like you can't do this relationship thing. That's not the way it is. It's like there's this expectation we're going to rub up against each other. We're going to disagree. We're going to not see eye to eye. We're going to hurt each other, whether we mean to or not. So we need to have forgiveness as a part of the mix. It's like this automatic thing. It's almost like we should put it into the vows when people get married. It's like you're going to need to say I'm sorry. So will you promise that you will say you're sorry to each other? So it's a regular ongoing thing. Making amends is not, to me it seems it's not exactly the same as asking for forgiveness. It's almost like asking for forgiveness is a tool that gets used often. Making amends is something when, after a long period of time, the relationship has gotten real twisted and it is dysfunctional and it is out of shape and it might even be completely broken. So making amends might include I'm sorry, but some relationships we don't know if we can get them back on track. We don't know if we can. It's almost like in some cases we need to say, I wish I had not made a mess of that relationship, but I know if I come anywhere close to it, I'm just going to make things worse. Let's let bygones be bygones, let the past be the past, and let me move on, and I'll pray for that person and hope the best for that person.
I'm not being facetious. When I say if you wait long enough and they're gone, okay, so the answer to that is, you say you write it down anyway, even though they're not here. Okay, but what good does that do, you or them, if you're just writing it down?
Some of this is just us acknowledging what is true. Acknowledging what is true and right, and not hiding the truth from ourselves. It's a way of acknowledging, at least acknowledging our part in stuff that has happened in relationships. And like we have mentioned, I think we mentioned this last time, in Christianity, we don't just ask forgiveness from one another as people, but almost it's like this, everything that we do, if we offend another person, we are also offending God. So there's this thing that it's not just an imbalance between us and this other person. Those imbalances will have an effect on our relationship with God. So
Doing that right along.
I'm sorry?
Well, I feel like I've been doing that right along. Telling God I'm sorry, I've done something wrong. That's built in.
Good. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
what
So
good knowledge.
so it's 1 John, the little epistle at the back of the New Testament, says you can't love God and have problems with your brothers and sisters. Because the love that we have, we either love everybody, God and people, or we're a hypocrite. We can't just, I love God, but I don't love them. So that's what 1 John is telling us. So acknowledging our part in kind of messing up the relationship or bringing hurt into the relationship, us acknowledging that is what's important. We don't want to be under any kind of illusions that what we're doing is right when it may not be right. So just acknowledging, I hurt that person, they're not here anymore, I can't ask for forgiveness. But by me writing it down, I'm acknowledging this happened a long time ago. I'm very sorry for it. It's like, what can be done? Well, nothing can be done because the person's not there anymore. You can't fix the relationship. But it's almost like, you know how we keep people alive in our memories?
Yeah.
And so in a way, we kind of keep these relationships going, at least in our memories. And then, some people of faith say, well, the person is not here on earth, but they're somewhere. So we're still connected with them somehow, whether we like it or not. So we can say, I'm sorry, even though they're not here. Maybe they're here, I'm sorry, or I'm sorry, however we want to look at it. But there is this idea that it's not, we don't just do it for the future in our future relationships. We do it because it's right and because our life is eternal. And a part of this idea of, Advent, we talked on Sunday, Advent is about the birth of Jesus, the coming of Jesus as a baby, the coming of Jesus into our lives through the Holy Spirit, and the coming of Jesus at the end of time and space and all of history, where God brings everything to a culmination. So there's this idea in Christianity that God started this story and the story will come to its full circle and its end at some point, but we're not there yet. So maybe us acknowledging something that happened a long time ago, even though the person is not here, we're still acknowledging the story is continuing and the impacts are still coming, and we are working along with God to bring things to its perfect and complete and good ending. So that's...
How does apology and forgiveness work together? Is that the same thing?
Apology is kind of like what comes from us toward another person. Apology is a one-way thing. Forgiveness almost feels like the apology has brought about its intended consequence. It's forgiveness completes the circle. So ideally, we offer an apology and we have an acceptance of an apology, and that brings about forgiveness.
Well, one of the parts of forgiveness
But sometimes somebody doesn't say you're forgiven. Sometimes people don't want
we
to
sometimes
accept it.
offer an excuse sometimes for our bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, well, I was working and all that. And
We include that in our apology sometimes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it ceases to be an apology at that time, because
it's our defense.
When you're putting, I have this thing that I was told there: make no excuse for wrongdoing. If you've done something to somebody, or somebody's done something for you, in other words, you can accept their apology or they come to apologize for then it's up to you to see it. And if you really look at yourself, you're looking at the same thing that you've probably done somewhere along the line to another. In fact, it might be the reason why that person's apologizing to you, to make us, there. So when you see that, it's so much easier to accept the apology.
Mm-hmm. That's in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. It's this agreement, this prayer that I'm going to need to do this. I'm going to need to apologize. And, we're asking God to forgive us, and we're reminding ourselves that we need to offer forgiveness. And we should also accept people's apologies if they come to us and say that they're sorry. Sometimes it's not easy, because sometimes if somebody says, I'm sorry, we might say, I don't think you are sorry. Or we might say, I don't think you understand what you did to me. I don't think you get it.
Okay.
So we can withhold our apologies. Now, if we're in the process of, if we're making amends with somebody, then maybe we bring that into the discussion. If somebody says, I'm sorry for what I did, and if we go to somebody to make amends, like we do in step 9, we say, okay, this person, it's not going to bring more hurt. Hopefully we can restore this relationship. I go to them and I say, I am so sorry for all these things that I've done to hurt you. The response from the other person, it's not up to us. We don't have any control of that. But it's probably good to go into it with the awareness that somebody might say, I don't believe you. I don't think you know what you did. But part of making amends, and I think we've covered this, part of making amends is listening and accepting the person's response and being open to maybe what we have to learn from it. Maybe we need to hear, I don't think you understand what you did. Maybe we need to, not necessarily to punish us or to make us pay for what we've done, but it is good for us to understand the consequences of what we've done. It could be a tremendous blessing for us to really know what we've done, because it might bring to our awareness the power of our actions and our words and the impacts that we have on other people. And usually the relationships where we do the most damage are the ones where we're the most vulnerable with one another. It's usually within a loving relationship of openness. It's at least at some point where we have broken that trust or hurt a person in that vulnerability. The people that we don't know, that we've never met, when we hurt them, it's like there's only so much damage you can do. I mean, at least emotionally, Now, if you go kill somebody's, family member or something, yeah, you're gonna hurt them. But just in the regular, normal relationship hurt kind of things, it's usually the people that we love or the people that we hurt, or the people that we're close to are the ones that we hurt or that hurt us.
I think most of the things I'm sorry for is just I'm out of balance, making a joke, a sarcastic joke, which I don't believe in, and then regretted I said something to someone that wasn't really funny. You just, or like when I told you the other day, I became aware that I was brought up to be very conscientious of not being wasteful, and learned my addiction was to be conscientious, but I then through the week saw it had turned into miserliness. And when I gave up trying to always save a little water or do something or another that was too conscientious, when I began to practice letting go every time I saw myself doing that, I became a much more comfortable, happier person because I said sorry to myself that I shouldn't be doing that, and I'm free now.
That's good. There's something about control that is I think related to these addictions. I think it's our way to control what is overwhelming to us. And so we could end of the day, let's say you've had a crazy day, and everything went wrong. Well, I'm going to control the way that I feel about it. I'm going to pop a pill, drink a drink, turn on something, escape somehow. And what I'm doing is I'm taking control of these feelings that are just naturally arising because of the type of day that we've had. And when we get into this process of always having to control something, so it may not be, those escapes. You mentioned like kind of always needing to have some type of a handle on things and finding yourself almost like in a compulsive way where you can't help yourself. I have to get control of this. So it's the same thing where it's like it's managing our life is a good thing, but rigid control of our life is not a good thing. So it's like we need control, but not stiff, overwhelming control. We're moving along with other parts, with other people in the thing. It's like, I don't know. For some reason I'm thinking about like when you're riding a horse, right? So when you're riding a horse, you do have some say-so on how fast or the direction the horse is going, right? But we can't fool ourselves to think we have complete control. If we had complete control, we'd be all tense and we'd be pulling too hard and we'd be like, not wanting the horse to do its part. And so it's like there's control, but it's kind of a loose control. If I remember correctly from like summer camps, when you hold the reins of a horse, you don't hold them tense and tight, right? Because if you do that, then the horse can't do its thing. So you're holding, but you're holding lightly, right? Even when I've been riding a motorcycle for a number of years, and when you go into corners, the odd thing is like you don't go into a corner and hold tight and turn. You actually push in the opposite direction of where you want to go. is the way it works. That's how, because then it makes the bike to lean. So it's like if you want to go this way, you kind of push a little this way, and then it turns. But if you try to manhandle it or whatever, it's not going to work out. So that's kind of like where our addictions come in, is like we want to be in charge and in control, and we don't want to deal with stuff that's not in our control. But that's not the way that we're wired to live life. We're wired to be responsive and to give our input and then to respond and give input and respond. So these steps are really kind of about just getting back into balance.
The balance is so important because I felt that the way I lived was actually very conscientious, but I could see sometimes, because of the fact that my mother was mentally damaged, I was starving, and the family had been raised to be very conscientious. I probably have had this fear of having not enough from very little, and I had to let go of it this week.
Mm-hmm. It's good. Let's get Elaine, and then we'll come to you.
It brings us to another point. Think outside the box. I am thinking about what you're saying, but I've had a problem this week that I'm the middle person. I'm the mother. I have the two that hardly speak to each other. One called the other at Thanksgiving, and the whole family's there and nobody talked to him. I should have taught him right, number one. That was my fault, okay, as the mother. But the more time that I gave it, a few weeks, days, whatever, I'm saying, well, Peter said, well, Mark didn't even talk to me. I know he was here because I heard him in the background. Okay. I'm saying to myself, finally, I said to myself, maybe Mark didn't know Peter was on the phone. At first I was tearing mad, but the more I thought about it, hey, maybe it did this way, maybe it did that way. Mm-hmm. But you're in the middle of two people that should be apologizing to each other or saying they're sorry, but it just doesn't always work that way. But give it a little time and think about how it affected other people.
Right. Part of this thing about being in control of your life or giving input and responding to life, some of it has to do with recognizing what we are really responsible for or not. And when it comes to being in between relationships, there are some things you might be responsible for, and then there are some things that you're not responsible for. I mean, you did play a part. If you're mom, then you had your responsibility as a mom. But then later on, as these kids grow, they're responsible for their own relationships. It's not up to you. It's up to them. They're two adults, So, yeah, it's hard to navigate that sometimes, to know what our part is or isn't.
I think forgiveness is another thing, is to do it as quickly as possible if you feel that you need to be forgiven for something. Because it's one of those things that'll eat you alive if you hold something within yourself. I had an experience by my 20th class reunion. I had a classmate come up to me that we were friends for, early, and then he came up. And I said, hey, how you doing? Well, and so I got something. I said, I don't know why you're so friendly, because you did that. I never even realized that I did what I did. Honest to goodness. And all I could say is, if I honest to goodness don't remember if I did it. I truly am sorry. In other words, I apologize for it. Mm-hmm. And he'd been holding on to this thing for 20 years. And then I watched and we became friends, and I was with him when he passed. Mm-hmm. And, that was the other thing. The other thing was my sister. She held this thing against my father to her deathbed. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I try and talk there. I mean, my father was gone. Mm-hmm. But she had this thing, and every time that we would talk about our father in a positive way, my brother or something. We don't, because when people pass, we seem to see the more good in it. In other words, my sister always would pop up. So I don't know how you can say those things. At the funeral, she said to my mom, how can he say those things? In other words, after with all the things he did. He was a hard man, I admit that, but you know what? I ended up appreciating it because he was an engineer at one, that's when he went to school. Engineers are precise, and he was precise to the anal. I mean, it was just like if there was a leaf left on the ground and your job was to rake the leaves. And if there was a drop left in the grease trap, which was one of your jobs to do. And my sister remembered her job was this is back before Permapress. Her job was to iron his shirts, because my father had to be meticulously dressed, make sure the collars and the cuffs were starched and folded perfectly with no wrinkles. That was her job. My father showed her how to do it, and he said, this is the way I expect it to be done. And he came home one time, and my sister Burrow, he didn't do such a good job. He took the whole batch and threw them down and said, redo them. That's what he was. I didn't like it when I was there, but I learned to appreciate, in other words, doing things correctly and right. And maybe I find myself doing the same thing. If I see a little speck on the ground, I'll pick it up, in other words, in the kitchen after I've done something or whatever. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but I now appreciate it where my sister, she took it to the grave with her.
There are aspects to life that demand precision and controlled precision. If you're an engineer, let's say you're an engineer of an airplane, you need to get everything perfect because you don't want people going up into an airplane with somebody they're like, I did a pretty good job, I think it's all right. No, you want things completely in control. But the thing is, relationships, there's no such thing as perfection. And if we try to bring that whole perfection exactly a certain way into a relationship, they don't work that way. Now, the only way that might work is something like if somebody is somebody's superior and they demand things be done a certain way, then that person is subservient and they have to respond to that. I mean, that's a type of relationship, but personal relationships are not made up of that kind of a hierarchy. So,
My brother-in-law was like that, and his daughters ended up mentally ill. I think if you can get out of balance, some things that are good can be bad if you take it too far.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, she was out of high school. She never came back.
Oh, that's too bad.
Well, I mean, she was civil and all that,
right.
And things like that, but she harbored this within her, and she died of cancer. And I really believe cancer comes from things that sometimes are unresolved within yourself, and it eats you alive. And, it's one of those things that
Well, this might be, we're looking at this step when we talk about withholding amends from relationships where we're going to do more damage. Some relationships need to dissolve and end. I've been in relationships with people before, and I will not go back to having a relationship with them. I can wish them the best life, but it's not going to benefit me, and it's not going to benefit them to get back into a relationship. And in a way, maybe it's a type of amends, another type of amends where we just say, we're going to agree to disagree. We're going to agree to not have a relationship. It might mean if you are forced into a situation where you have to talk to the person or you have to interact with the person or whatever. We can always shift into a mode and we can be civil and we can, not make a big scene or whatever. But I think we do have a right to determine whether we want to be in a relationship with another person or not. And this goes for, sometimes this happens with parents and children. Sometimes with parents and children, the child decides at some point, I don't want a relationship with my mother or father. I had to have it when I was a kid. I didn't have a choice. But now that I do have a choice, I do not want to have a relationship with this person anymore. And I think for some circumstances that's okay. Because sometimes there's so much damage that was done in that relationship that it's better for the relationship not to exist. And again, it doesn't mean you have to be bitter about it. It doesn't mean you have to be hateful about it. There are people that I've met and I decide I don't want to become friends with them. I don't have to become friends with everybody. I don't have to put effort into building a relationship with everybody. So there are some people that I may say for different reasons, I don't really want to have that person in my life. Now and it might just be that it's not that what they're doing is wrong. It's just that the way they are and the way I am, it doesn't mix. It rubs me the wrong way. It drives me crazy, and I just don't want to have that.
We talked about personality types, and I love people with energy, but I can't, because I'm not an energetic person. After about 3 hours, even I gravitate to them, I have to pull away. Well, that's nothing on them, and it's nothing on me. That's just. And then I was thinking about when Paul writes about gifts, we have different gifts. And I was young in a church when all the women had to teach Sunday school and all the men, no matter how they made their living, had to take care of the lawn. And you have gifts. You go with the people who match what you're interested in.
Yeah, I think you can still determine, even though you're not going to be friends with somebody, I think you can still love that person. I think you can still love a person from afar, and you can acknowledge and appreciate them for who they are, and you can still say, but I don't want to be in a relationship with you. Well,
there are many people in church who, the guys that's hardest to get along with, when something needs to be said that nobody else would be so rude, they say it, and thank God it gets out there. So you're kind of glad they were in the group.
Yeah. Sometimes people that you don't want to have a relationship with that person may still have a really profound impact on your life. They may show you a part of life or show you a part of yourself that you would not have seen or acknowledged otherwise. So, the relationships they're complicated things. So let's jump into the book. Let's make sure we do a little of the book before we finish the hour. So you might say that step 9 is telling us how to use skillful means to both protect our own humanity and to liberate the humanity of others. It also says that our amends to others should be direct. That is specific, personal, and concrete. In other words, probably not an email or a tweet. Jesus invariably physically touched people and met people when he healed them. It's a face-to-face encounters, although usually difficult after a hurt, that do the most good in the long run, even if the other party rebuffs you at the first attempt. You open the door from your side, and it thus remains open until you reclose it. So it's skillful means to protect our humanity and to liberate the humanity of others. So that's an interesting way to think about it. Usually, I think when we think about making amends, we're thinking about protecting other people from us. You know,
And this
but
humanity means that we do right and wrong. We're both kind of equal in this, Jess.
right, being human is, yeah, it's to be alive, it's to learn, it's to do good things, it's to screw up, it's to be hurt by others, it's that messy, amazing thing that we experience as humans. So it's almost like we can move into like robotic mode where we're removing our humanity when we hurt one another. You know, when we're hurt by other people, there's a tendency for us to dehumanize the other person. When we say that person's evil and that person is, you know, we can make them into a stereotype, or we can make them into a caricature, you know, and not think of them as a deep person with all these life experiences and range of emotions as well. And that's probably to protect ourselves. So we kind of in our mind turn somebody else into this like little goblin demon kind of a thing, and that way we prevent ourselves from relating to them in a way that would be vulnerable to us. But the job of making amends is to remove that way of thinking about the other person, and hoping that they do that for us too, because we don't want to approach somebody to make amends and they're looking at us like we're the demon, you know.
So
We're kind of showing in an amends, we're showing to them, we're revealing to them our humanness and we're kind of laying bare our faults and our shortcomings, and we're saying, I have come to realize that I let my life get out of control, and it had such a painful, disappointing, chaotic impact on so many people, and you're one of the victims of the way that I was living, and I'm so sorry for that.
But sometimes we don't have to really be guilty of anything if someone wants us to be sorry, do we? I mean, I was thinking about when...
Say that again?
We're not always guilty when someone thinks we should ask for forgiveness. I remember thinking my brother, when he sold a farm, he thought he should be the executor, but we knew as the only boy, he was taking charge of everything. And I said to him, my aunt let the bank be the executor, and I want to keep it that way. And he said, you're evil. I never felt like saying I'm sorry to him, but he told me about 3 months ago, I guess, he said, I've learned to talk to you in the best way of the whole family. So I didn't even ask for his forgiveness. I just, when he tries to dominate, I'll take the conversation back. Little turns of conversation make us equal. And I think he liked that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is. So in premarital counseling, there are often discussions about doing a good job of fighting with one another. Do you fight well? How do you handle disagreements? So we can get into disagreements, and we can be honest in our disagreement with one another. Sometimes after a disagreement, there does need to be an apology. Maybe we've overstepped our bounds in some ways, but I think oftentimes we can have disagreements with one another, and it doesn't mean that anybody needs to apologize about it. It's just two people coming in to try to figure something out, don't see eye to eye, go back and forth. Now, if we get into name calling and we get into bringing up something from the past, or if we make it turn ugly, then yeah, we may need to apologize.
But he never did, but I didn't.
Yeah, but
I didn't
sometimes.
interfere. I just made sure our conversations were always equal after that.
Yeah.
so he could know that I felt like I was the same
Well,
as him.
it sounds like you didn't hold it against him. You didn't, if he called you evil, you didn't hold it against him and demand, you need to take that back and, it's,
didn't think he
we
meant
kind of
it.
like, right. He's just saying something in the moment and, yeah.
He might have meant it for that moment. But I thought I was
But you
being
could
logical.
you can understand that. You can say, well, I get it.
My
Let's-
husband actually has had trouble getting over that, because he says, how can you still talk to him? And I said, well, because he and I are learning to grow in how we talk to each other. We're better than our parents were.
Yeah.
If nobody's perfect, how do you account for you and I?
I've got to be perfect because it says right there in the Bible, it said, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven
Yeah.
is perfect. So
Yeah.
I am perfect. I am working at it. We're
I
perfect
forgive
in our own ways.
Well, I think, we use this word humanity. I think if we look at it in the right way, being perfect and being human is really supposed to be kind of the same thing. Be perfectly human.
That's good.
That's what we're created to be, is to be perfectly human. And it because if you think about perfect, usually that ends up being unhealthy or imbalanced or not real or but if I think perfectly human, fully, there's a authentically human. Authentic is a really great word for that. Authentically human. It means, it's trying to be right in the center of what God created us to be. And I think too often when we look at perfect, we think of in terms of engineering. We think in terms of mathematics. We think in terms of, but life is not perfect. Life is crazy. I mean, when you look at, I remember hearing Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about how the galaxy is, or how the universe is so chaotic and deadly, and says if you focus your telescope in the right place, you can see galaxies colliding with one another. Now we talk about like the destruction of an asteroid hitting Earth, that happened supposedly with the dinosaurs and brought about an ice age and just decimated entire populations of life on Earth and took all this time to recover. That's just from one small rock hitting a bigger rock. Can you imagine galaxies colliding with one another? Just the utter destruction that would take place in that. Is that perfect? I mean, that's God's creation. I mean, was there like a garden and a snake and an apple in those galaxies, and that's why that's happening? We have these simplified explanations of like what brought about the chaos, but the chaos maybe is a part of the perfection. The humanity is a part of the perfection. All this stuff that's like out of balance and then in balance and the flow, that's a whole part of the perfection.
That's something we've talked about, my husband and I, because he gets so upset sometimes how bad the bacon is. And I said, well, God made that, so it's going to be imperfect. I said, everything we buy in a box was made in a factory, so it's the same every time we get it. But meat's different.
Yeah. So one of the things that I eat, I carry over from how I grew up. I grew up vegetarian, and then we grew up with all this soy meat, this fake meat, right? So one of the things that was our favorite, they're called stripples. They're not called stripples anymore, but it's fake bacon, right? So it's made out of, and it has the dark part and the light part, and it's mixed in a machine and then cut, and it has the imperfect. It's not it's perfectly symmetrical lines. It's supposed to look like a piece of bacon with the fat part and the meat part, right? So every time when you buy a package, I still buy a package of this stuff. I still eat this stuff. There's a lot of stuff I don't eat, but I still eat that for whatever reason. So every package, because it was mixed differently, has a different ratio of the meat part to the fat part. And when you cook it, if it doesn't have enough of the fat part, it doesn't taste as good. And this is like the fake bacon. So it's the same with bacon. If bacon has too much fat or too much meat, you want a good mixture, but it's never going to be perfect.
No, sometimes it curls up instead of
Yeah.
frying evenly.
Because it's animals. It's not.
God forbade it, we didn't.
Yeah.
Even the same with tomatoes, and we get so upset because we buy an apple that doesn't taste as good.
Right.
That's not
Yeah.
made in
What
factory.
is a perfect apple? What is a perfect tomato? What is a perfect slice of bacon? What is it? All right. So let's look at this next paragraph. The most skillful insight is the cleverly added. I'm sorry. I think Okay, you open the door from your side, and it thus remains open unless you reclose it. But the most skillful insight is the cleverly added, except when to do so would injure them or others. Bill W. could only have learned such wisdom by doing it wrong, probably many times. It takes 7 to 10 years, they say, for a married couple to begin to learn how to fight fairly. I can vouch for that I think it was about 10 years into my marriage with Suli that we started really laughing with one another in arguments. So not at each other, but we started basically we started learning how when an argument began, as it starts to unfold, quickly turn it into something where you're making fun of yourself, where you don't let it go too far. There is a spot in there in arguments where it can start to turn. It'll turn sour, but it can turn to be funny. It can turn to be something silly. Like you can turn it right away if you. Now you have to be humble, and you have to not, be competitive and like, I'm going to win this one. It's like, it's realizing that if anybody wins any fight, it's not good for the relationship. It's about understanding each other. It's about, hearing each other. And so if we start to realize we're getting off track, throw some humor in there and make fun of yourself and lighten it up and just decide we're not going to turn this into something. If you can do that, it's amazing. You don't have fights because you just
have differences.
You have some differences. You have some conversations. So anyway, it takes.
I got my husband to stop trying to change me with one remark into how I should do things more perfectly. I said, you could be a better teacher.
Oh yeah. It kind of lightens the mood there a little bit.
Then he realized that I'm not going to learn the first time he tells me how to do something. I first have to decide, do I want to do it his way?
Right. Did I ask to learn this?
Never the best way to keep peace is agree with thy adversary quickly while thou art in the way.
Yeah.
I mean, really, because that's.
Yes.
I find that even though that's what you talk about being a little humble, but it becomes almost a habit now. In other words,
yeah.
If
you use the phrase "My apologies, Your Highness," if you use that. Don't be sarcastic. Don't be sarcastic with it. My apologies, Your Highness.
Vacation home is having a big fight on how to do the roads.
I always acknowledge you're the smart one.
Scott was in charge of the moderating.
I said, I'm the spiritual one. You're the smart one.
Scott was in charge of moderating the meeting on resurfacing the road. There was so much fighting about it. And he talked to the neighbor this way, and then he talked to a neighbor up the hill, and the neighbor up this hill says, I know which side you're on, because you've been down there talking to Ed. And I said, I'm up here talking to you. I'm just not the moderator, don't have a position. And the guy, he just wrote us a Christmas card, and he was so pleasant, and he was glad Scott was able to moderate everybody to be more communicative and not as judgmental.
Yeah.
They liked that.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a skill to keeping it light. Yeah.
I have a little plaque that was given to me, I don't know how long ago, that says, God made all of us perfect, he's just not finished with us yet.
There you go. We're working it out. We're working it out. All right, so we're fighting fairly. One often needs time, discernment, and good advice from others before one knows the when, how, who, and where to apologize or to make amends. If not done skillfully, an apology can actually make the problem and the hurt worse. In the 12 steps, we're experienced enough to know that. Not everything needs to be told to everybody all the time in full detail. Sometimes it only increases the hurt, the problem, and the person's inability to forgive. This all takes wise discernment and often sought out advice from others. It's a great paragraph with a lot of
Well, it means you also
stuff.
have to give up fear, because it's going to be very hard to have a lighthearted reaction if you're afraid that things are going to go wrong and everything will fall apart.
Mhm.
Letting go of fear is hard.
I have a couple of comments, and based on this last thing, what we just read, in 12-step recovery programs, it is highly suggested that one gets a sponsor or a spiritual director, a pastor, a mentor, someone to guide them through these 12 steps, and especially when making a serious amends, it would be wise to just run it through, like it's saying right here, discernment and advice, whatever. And it's for both parties involved. And gosh, there's so many things that were shared. Okay, so this thing about not everything needs to be told to everybody all the time and in full detail. There have been times when I have made amends, and instead of coming back and I'm sorry, I apologize, I was wrong, I basically told them of, what I've been doing these last so many years, and that I grew up, and they understood, that the lady I was talking to understood. And this thing about humanity and stuff is that forgiveness is a gift that I give myself.
That's right.
I do not have to carry that burden and that weight around with me anymore.
Yeah.
And there's been people who have passed on that I felt I needed an amends, something a little bit more concrete or a little bit more intense. And so I sat down and I wrote a letter. My grandmother was one of them. And I went in my bedroom, I closed the door, I said a prayer, I down on my knees, I read the letter out loud, and then I burned the letter. I let it go.
Mhm.
And also the, what they call the living amends of, okay, so if I couldn't do something nice for grandma because she passed on, I can agree not to act and talk to someone like that anymore, but to come from a place of love, kindness. And also, I know a lot, like with financial amends, it's like if I can't give the money back or whatever, I can write a check to a charitable or do something for someone else. There's so many ways to make amends, and that's why having a spiritual director or someone is so important. And
So you're saying you heal yourself when you.
yes, forgiveness is
That's a
gift
part
I
of
give
it.
myself,
Yeah.
absolutely, as well as the other person. And when I forgive someone else, there's an expression about how I'm cleaning my side of the street. I mean, yes, I could go over and clean your side of the street, but that's not my responsibility. You cleaning your side of the street, whether you accept or don't accept my amends, is none of my business. That's your business, and it's your responsibility to clean your side of the street. And I'm doing what I can, and that's it. And and then the other thing, I forget what you call it, but when they say we're making amends, I think of, because I do lots of crafts and sewing and stuff, is that when I'm mending something, I am repairing it.
Oh.
And whether I'm giving that to someone else or I'm just using it for myself, I am repairing it, and there's so much freedom in that.
Oh, yeah.
So much peace, and I honestly believe that's what God wants for me in my life, to make some peace.
That's good.
That's great.
That's good.
That's all I got.
Very good. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Good stuff. Yeah, these can go in different directions. They can have different impacts. But like it said earlier, it is for us and our well-being, and it is for the well-being of the other people. It's there's the phrase in the New Testament of we are called to a ministry of reconciliation, and that's used a couple different times. A ministry of reconciliation, yeah, and even I think even when we decide not to make amends with another person because to do so would hurt them, it means we are thinking of their well-being, and we are doing our part to make sure they are in a good shape, because we acknowledge that if we got involved, it would be bad for them. Yeah. So, but we could still, just by acknowledging that means taking steps in a positive direction. That is and it can be painful for us not to apologize. We can ache so badly. I want so badly to say I'm sorry to this person and to restore this thing. And so, but it means taking this mature step of not being selfish and putting my feelings and my experience first, but putting theirs first. Because if I insist on apologizing, that can be really self-centered. You know, the same with trying to clean the other person's side of the street. That's a controlling thing. That's us trying to control somebody else's life, so that, you know. So, but we'll continue on this. We need discernment, good advice. The mentor is just wonderful to have. Wonderful to have a neutral party, a wise neutral party, to shed light on what you're experiencing. I have a wonderful mentor in my life that I meet with every month, and it's been just a wonderful blessing to have somebody that's like, they don't know my family, my friends, they don't even live in Florida, but I've been in this relationship for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and just wonderful to have somebody that you can share things with.
Sometimes we think we're really hard on ourselves too, and I think that's the idea of having somebody who's neutral, because we might think we owe amends or because we're horrible people, and they're like, no, you really didn't do anything wrong, or, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh,
So,
Yeah. Or you can find out that what you thought you did wrong was actually something else.
yeah.
There's something else that you did that was much worse.
Did you ever hear that expression, love is to never say you're sorry?
yes.
What is
And
it?
I'm-
Love is to never say you're sorry.
Oh,
And I'm gonna
goodness.
go along with
Yeah.
that
Wow.
thing, because my husband, when we were first married, picked on everything, and he said, you never say you're sorry. But his cousin lived nearby, and she said, I'm tired of hearing you say you're sorry to me. So he didn't want to hear me say I was sorry when I was saying it. He wanted to be the top dog, so I'm not with that. I'm with that.
I don't know, that popped into my head.
The first Noel, the angels did say, was too certain for shepherds in fields and